Thank you for trying.
Oh, thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to chapter 31. We're still in the middle. I think we're on maybe part two, I forget, of our chapter 31. So we're about halfway down in Lessons in Tanya, which we're studying for non-Jews and Hasidus, where we try and focus on things for non-Jews and Hasidus. And so we're in Lessons in Tanya. We are in chapter 31 of Likutei Amarim, which is the very first part of the Tanya, of Lessons of Tanya. Okay, we were talking about the serpent skin, and we went over a really cool footnote yesterday. So there's four different types of klipot that I know of. There's the gimel klipot tameo, the three completely impure klipot. And then you have something called klipat nogah, which has an element of goodness in it. The Shekhinah is apparently trapped in it, and she needs to be rescued from it. And it's said here in the footnote that a way to call the klipat nogah is the serpent's skin. It's not the serpent itself, but is the skin of the serpent. And if you've ever seen snake skin, it's translucent. And the klipat nogah is also translucent, which is why you can see the shimmer. Why it's called nogah, because it's a shimmer. It's like the light. That's from Habakkuk 4:3 or 3:4. Forgive me, I forget offhand. Um, so that's I think where we left off. So true, the body, the goof, remains abominable and loathsome. As the Zohar says, it is called a serpent's skin, since the essential character of the animal soul has not been transformed to good, so that it might be absorbed into the realm of holiness. Um, for as explained above, the Benoni, the intermediary man, may indeed elevate the garments of the animal soul. There's thought, speech, and deed, three garments. The thought, speech, and action through which it expresses itself by performing the mitzvot by means of his thought, speech, and action. But the essential character of the animal soul, its intellectual and emotional faculties, remains subject to the realm of klipat nogah. How then can one be expected to rejoice knowing that his body and animal soul are still in such an undesirable state? So there's the animal soul that enlivens the goof, enlivens the body. And the animal soul is from this klipat, is from klipa, whether it's the three completely impure or the klipat nogah. yet this yet let his divine soul, the nefesh elokis, be more precious to him than his loathsome body, so that he rejoices in the soul's joy at its liberation through the observance of the Torah and mitzvot. So again, the Torah and mitzvahs is not a cliche, even though it sounds like a cliche, but because you might hear that term so much, Torah and mitzvahs. But the truth is, Torah and mitzvot is it. It is the plan. It is the roadmap. It's the master plan, so to speak. Um, through the observance of the Torah and mitzvahs from the exile of the body, without letting the sadness on account of the lowly state of his body interfere with or disturb the joy of his soul, of the soul. This form of divine service. So there's divine service. I wonder if he uses the term avoda here. Um, no, but there's avoda zara, and there's probably something like avoda kadosh. Um, there's strange service, strange worship, and holy worship. I was thinking if he was going to use that, in which the divine soul breaks free of its exile within the body, while the body and animal soul remain in their lowly state. It is analogous to the exodus from Egypt, of which it is written that the people escaped. Very cool. Ha'im. Yisrael told Pharaoh that they would leave Egypt for only 3 days, but upon being released from his land, they escaped. Yeah, sure. Like, yeah, we just want to go out pretty far. 3 days journey. Um, at first glance, it seems strange. Why should it have been so in a manner of flight? Had they demanded of Pharaoh that he set them free forever, would he not have been forced to do so, having been stricken by the plagues? The explanation the Alter Rebbe goes on to say lies in the spiritual aspect of the Exodus, and this reflected in its physical counterpart, just as every event in Jewish history reflects a parallel spiritual process. The corporal enslavement of Yisrael, of the Jewish people in Egypt, reflected the enslavement of their souls by the klipa of Egyptian impurity. You remember what klipa is, bud? Their exodus from Egypt likewise represented a spiritual liberation from this klipa, that husk, that shell, that conceals. Since the spiritual exodus was an act of escape, i.e., their soul broke away and escaped from the impurity of Egypt, while the body and animal soul were still in exile within the klipa. Therefore, the physical exodus likewise assumed the manner of an escape. In the Alter Rebbe's words, but escape was necessary because the evil in the animal souls of Yisrael was still strong in the left part of the heart, the seat of the animal soul. It's remember it sits in the side of Gevura, the side of well, I guess strength, but Gevura, the which it takes Gevura to conceal. For their impurity, the impurity of Klipa, did not cease until the giving of the Torah. Hmm. Yet their aim and desire was that their divine soul, their nefesh elokis, leave the exile of the Sitra Achra, the other side, the impurity of Egypt, and that it cleave to God. So it is written that there is a divine service which consists of the divine soul's escape from the impurity of the body and animal soul. God is my strength and my fortress, my refuge in the day of affliction. He is my high tower and refuge. Oh, wow.
Jason
And
can Jason. Sorry.
that's okay.
Um, can we go back and look at a 16?
Oh, sure. Do I skip over that?
Uh-huh.
Oh, my goodness, I did. That one was a Shabbat, and I totally skipped over this one. Yeah, so yet their aim and desire was their divine soul. Was that their divine soul leave the exile of the Sitrach or the impurity of Egypt, and that it cleaved to Hashem. This explains why the hour of redemption arrived. God did not detain them in Egypt even for a moment. Mechilta on Exodus 12:41, lest the evil within them drag them back to the impurity of Egypt, based on a note by the Rebbe. He is my high tower and my refuge, and he is my escape. And the exodus from Egypt exemplified this idea of escape. Hence, it is written of the redemption which will take place in the time to come when God will remove the spirit of impurity from the earth. And there will therefore be no evil necessitating spiritual escape. You will not go out in haste, nor go in flight, for God will go before you. That's pretty cool. So it's almost like Hashem will, from our perspective, be coming to us rather than going to him. It's like he's going to be completely revealed everywhere. It's going to be like the giving of the Torah to everyone. The exodus from Egypt, however, took place in a manner of flight, for the evil was still strong in the people's animal souls. Similarly, whenever one disregards the lowliness of his body and animal soul and engages in the Torah and the mitzvahs in order to free the divine soul from its corporeal exile, he, he affects the spiritual equivalent of the exodus from Egypt. Very big deal. That's really big. The reason why it's big for non-Jews is because whether your soul's from the completely impure klipot or the klipat nogah, you're still in klipa. And even for the Yisrael, when they're born, their bodies, everybody has a nefesh behemoth. Everybody has an animal soul. So it's important that everybody goes through this process, or maybe tries to. I mean, it's hard to talk to people about it, right? But this is a process for seemingly everybody. Why particularly for Jews, for Yisrael? Because they have the Torah. Like it's their thing, like to do. But it appears this is talking about anybody has the potential, I believe, to do this. One may lend this to teshuva, the restoration of his soul, to its source. So everybody's capable of this teshuva. Additional strength, because everybody has a nefesh behemoth. Everybody has an animal soul. Additional strength from the depths of his heart, and likewise at a greater measure of flight and joy to the joy of his soul, brought on by the teshuva. By comforting his heart from its distress and sorrow, through reflecting, literally speaking to his heart with knowledge and understanding as follows. Certainly it is true, as said above, that I am utterly remote from God, etc. But it was not I who created myself in a manner that permits the divine soul to be exiled within the impurity of the body and animal soul. It was God who created me thus. Why then has God done such a thing? That's a question for the ages. To cause the divine soul, a part of his light which fills and encompasses, is a thing. Hamila Vesoiviv fills and encompasses all worlds, and before which all is as naught, to descend into the body and be clothed in a serpent's skin and a fetid drop. Surely this descent must be for the sake of subsequent ascent. So this descent is for ascent. I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times I hear people who get into Kabbalah or esoteric wisdom, and they get to this stuff thinking, and they separate God and Hashem, heaven forbid. They separate Hashem and Elohim, and the heaven forbid, but they actually curse um, the things that have happened, but they don't realize that Hashem is Elohim. Hashem is one. It's very important to remember. Surely this descent must be for the sake of a subsequent ascent. That is, to elevate to God the entire animated animal soul, which derives from klipat nogah, and also its garments of thought, speech, and action, by means of clothing them in the action, speech, and thought of the Torah. This is huge. So, we've learned from chapter 1 that Hasidei Omoto Alam, the kind ones of the peoples of the world, the kind ones of the peoples of the concealment, the Ha'olam, the Helem, the these souls are derived from Klipat Noga. It's thought, I've heard people say that's where that such a person's soul is, and that's where they remain, and they can't be elevated, and they can't do this and that or whatever. what the Alter Rebbe is saying here, he's not talking about Jews or non-Jews, even though he does explicitly says that Yisrael is specifically from klipat nogah, which is definitely true. Um, but what is he saying here? Klipat nogah, the purpose of people, like for instance, Hasidei Umot Ha'olam, their purpose is to ascend. That descent into the serpent skin from the klipat nogah, that nefesh behemoth, the whole purpose of that descent is to ascend. This is huge. This is why, thank God we're able to go over this stuff. Why I wanted to go over this stuff, like this, the Hasidus, the mechanics of Hasidus is for everybody. It's talking about, so this does not mean you are Yisrael. What this means is that this is the path. Yisrael's just been on the path for thousands of years. That is to elevate to God the entire animating nefesh behemoth, the animal soul, which derives from klipat nogah. Hasidei Motolam derived from klipat nogah. It is the purpose to ascend this, and also its garments of thought, speech, and action. So there are three garments of that soul. By means of clothing them in the action, speech, and thought of the Torah. This is huge, guys and gals. This is a big deal.
Can I add a little bit here, James, out
Sure.
of Charleston? Excuse me, if I can. In the sense that the essential purpose of creation is the existence of the body and the animal soul, not the existence of the divine soul. Even through great effort, we must invest in them is neither pleasant nor easy. It is our mission to do so. It is the reason we exist and the world as a whole exists. This means binding my thoughts, speech to God's thoughts and speech, which constitute the very corpus of halakot that have been set forth before us. Similarly, I wish to bind my actions with God's actions by fulfilling the mitzvot. The Torah and the mitzvot constitutes Hashem's will and wisdom. When a person is engaged in fulfilling them, he unites with God, since he is essentially thinking his thoughts and speaking his words. Since this unity encompasses thought, speech, and deeds, actions, which are expressed by the body and the animal soul, it incorporates a person's animal soul. The animal soul is the instrument through which we act. It is through the animal soul that holy thoughts are completed, holy words are spoken, and holy deeds are performed. For this reason, the Torah is described as restoring the soul in Psalms 19:8, meaning it restores the soul to its root and source. The unusual explanation of the phrase restoring the soul is that the Torah revives the soul, giving a person the strength to live. But it can also be understood as saying that the Torah returns the soul to its father's house in its youth. The Torah is a path on which the soul returns to its source.
Oh man, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Very good, Dixie. That was Steinschultz, right?
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. That's what I'm talking about. Like, this is huge. And I'm not saying do Jewish stuff. I'm not saying like go out and fully keep Shabbat and all this stuff. But the sages are talking about when an akum, when an idolater begins, when he's interacting with Torah, interact with the Sheva mitzvahs. Things as simple as Eino Avodah Zarah, don't do Avodah Zarah, don't do idolatry, don't do strange worship. This whole book, I mean, this is part an extension of that. Like, this is how you know Hashem. You're knowing your Father, you're knowing your source. You're not doing Avodah Zarah. You have to know the Father in order to keep from doing Avodah Zarah. So if a son wants to know his father, so This is huge. This is so big. This doesn't mean you need to convert. This doesn't mean you have to become Jewish or start doing all the mitzvahs all at once or whatever. I'm saying there's an entry path, and just with your energy, whatever level that you believe your whatever God gave you, just try your utmost to study and do these garments, thought, speech, and deed, thought, speech, and action in Torah and mitzvot. It sounds cliche, but it is it. It is literally the thing. And even in the Akum, if you're listening to this and you were involved in idolatry or whatever, Akum is can even be Isaac, deeply involved in the study of the Torah, particularly in regards to there's seven. You can't be an idolater and deeply involved in this stuff. You have to stop doing idolatry as best as you possibly know, and keep learning so that you can know even better. Keep learning Torah so that you can know even better. And from there you can progress, like honoring your parents, giving tzedakah, prayer. Those three are big. Those are big deals. But when you're doing those things with kavana, without avodah zarah, when you are learning about Hashem and His wisdom, we are truly deeply involved in the study of Torah. It's my belief that you are furthering this. You are part of the program. You're part of the holy program. This is a huge deal, and I think many non-Jews don't know that, and they never come across it, and they lose hope and they give up. And it's my hope and my belief and my hope that more people understand this about themselves and will attach to Torah, attach to Hashem from their perspective, because Hashem's already attached to you. Hashem is everything, literally. He's the reality. He is reality. But from our perspective, it doesn't seem that way, or it might not seem that way, right? We have to realize this about ourselves, all of humanity, so that we can elevate our own nefesh behemoths as well as the things around us. Okay. For by performing the mitzvot and by speaking and thinking words of Torah, the animal soul and its garments are elevated toward godliness. This does not mean also, too, that a Yisrael is going to accept you. This does not mean that this is based in and you're going to be Jewish and things like that. It just means that you are a self-actualized human being, that you are starting to learn your role in the world and like what your purpose is, and it's to ascend from the descent. The subject of this ascent will be discussed further on at length. It will be shown how this is the purpose for which the world was created, the whole purpose of the world. Wow, that's cool. So why did Hashem create the world? There you go. Chapter 31, Lessons in Tanya, or the Tanya itself. The purpose of creation was for this ascent. So the purpose of, or this could even be read as Helam, the purpose of concealment is for revealment. The purpose of descent is to ascend. If this be so, there is one thing for me to do, and this shall be my sole aim throughout my life. Wow, thank God, about getting tears in my eyes. To immerse therein in the thought, speech, and action of the Torah and the mitzvahs, the life of my spirit and soul, as it is written, to you, God, I raise my soul. Wow, that's amazing. If this be so, there is one thing for me to do, and this shall be my sole aim throughout my life. There are people who tell you, no, you can't do that. Don't be bitter. Try not to be bitter about that. Just, it's you and Hashem. Don't let intermediaries get between you and your relationship with Hashem. In practical terms, this means to bind my thought and speech with God's thought and speech, which are, in fact, the very laws which have been set out before us. For the laws of the Torah are God's thought and speech, and by studying them, one binds his own faculties of thought and speech with their divine counterparts. That's Achdut Hashem, that's oneness. Similarly, with action, I will bind my faculty of action with God's faculty of action through performing the mitzvot, performing the commandments. That's pretty amazing. I would, my own personal opinion is don't put the cart before the horse. I think there are too many people out there on the internet that try to do Jewish things when it comes to action. They try to like look or do things that they don't understand what they're doing. And it's because they haven't did the thought and speech part yet. For this reason, the Torah is described as that which restores the soul, i.e., it restores the soul to its source and root. Moreover, concerning this occupation, the Torah and the mitzvahs, which bring joy to the soul by restoring it to its source and which banishes the sadness of its exile in the body and soul. It is written, God's commandments are just, they gladden the heart. When one considers that one's study of the Torah and observance of the mitzvot elevate not only his divine soul, but also his animal soul, his teshuva will gain in depth, and the joy of his soul will gain in intensity. How true is that for even non-Jews who are doing this? Like the teshuva is huge, I think, for a lot of non-Jews, right? Like we went from an element of like super concealment relatively, that even stuff that we're reading here is so intense. It's so bright, right? It's just amazing. Thank God. For although the soul's escape from exile within the body and animal soul spoken of earlier would in itself be sufficient cause for great joy, yet this is a joy tempered by sadness over the lowly state in which one's body and animal soul remain. When one realizes, however, that Torah and the mitzvahs elevate the body and animal soul as well, his joy will be untarnished. Baruch Hashem. That's awesome. So does, like, you guys know when it comes to the action, there's thoughts, speech, and action. So when you're actually performing a mitzvah, say you're giving tzedakah, genuinely giving tzedakah, you have kavanah, you're doing it. That is, you are putting on that garment of of Torah in that action, that specific action. It's a really big deal. And I don't know if people understand that, but that's like, it's literally revealing godliness into the world. And it's important because it's something that anybody can do. Apparently, from what the Alter Rebbe is saying, if you have a nefesh behemoth, you have an animal soul, particularly from this klipat nogah. I mean, the Gimel klipot tameot, they are completely selfish people. But I mean, you can't, it's hard to discern that in reality, right? Like, isn't it? It's to discern who is doing something selfish or selfless sometimes, right? So maybe it's not, and it's probably not our place to judge you so much. Just maybe that's part of the Yisrael and the based in of the Ger Toshav, and whether he accepts the seven, then you know that he is Machaside Motalim. He's from the kind ones of the peoples of the world. He has an element of bittul. He receives Chelek Olam Haba. He receives that portion in the world to come because he or she has accepted the Sheva mitzvahs, has accepted the seven commandments of Noah. as stated in the Torah. And because of that, he has bittul just by default, right? Because he is accepting the yoke of heaven. He's accepting the yoke of Torah. Therefore, okay, he obviously has bittul. So that's how that ties in with the Rambam. Okay, well, that's chapter 32. Wow, that was very, very powerful. I don't know about you all, but that was super powerful. That really just encapsulated everything when it comes to not just the souls of Yisrael, but the Nefesh Behemoths. Oh, Ernestine's trying to get back in. There we go. So I think chapter 31 there, that ending, it really encapsulated everything that we talk about, not only just for the animal souls of Yisrael, but also for the souls of a lot of non-Jews called Hasidei Motalam, which are from klipat nogah. So that was powerful. I don't know if you guys want to continue on for chapter 33, but let me go ahead and stop the recording and we'll decide here.
James,
Oh yeah, let's go ahead and talk about it. Go ahead, Dixie.
While you're deciding, in the Stein salts, it's got a summary at the back.
Oh, go ahead and are you going to share it? We'll keep recording.
Okay, well, I can, yeah. It kind of summed it all up, and it kind of, I'm more sure because it kind of brought this whole thing together, and I guess I need you guys' help in understanding what they're saying. It says this is chapter 31. The chapter discussed the question of how to emerge from the sadness and bitterness of the soul to a state in which one knowingly placed himself. As explained in the previous chapter, a person does this in order to break the eschatological sense of smugness that, particularly for the Benoni, leads to a dull, unfeeling heart and at times a dull, unthinking mind. A person achieves this by conducting an honest self-assessment, the result of which may be disturbing and upsetting. He realizes that even if he has been engaged in Torah study and mitzvot all his life, he is no better than others in some ways, worse. However, although this bitterness and sadness may be justified, he must ultimately move beyond them, since a person needs to serve God joyfully. But he cannot emerge from this state of sadness by denying reality. Once he has judged himself honestly and found himself wanting and flawed, he cannot avoid the conclusions. He must find joy despite his reflection and even as a result of it. In this chapter, the author of the Tanya tells us that such a person can rejoice in his divine soul as it returns to its source, and as he sets aside his concern for his animal soul. Just as during the Exodus, the people had fled, his holy soul is liberated as it flees his self, his body and animal soul, which remains low, contemptible, and abhorrent. Yet a solution exists on a larger scale, one that involves the liberation of all existence and fulfills the goal of creation, thus justifying the world's existence. This solution involves shifting one's awareness and way of thinking so that one's sense of self is no longer of prime importance, not only with regard to selfish motives, but even to supposedly holy intentions. The person moves from a world in which his sense of self and attainments are central to an objective world where the center is occupied by Hashem. In the light of this, the question of whether or not a person's self, with all its needs and problems, is deserving is of no account. And all matters is one's service of God and the reality on which one has to work, instead of examining himself, asking, I have progressed. Have I attained purity? Questions that can only aggravate his bitterness. He focuses on the world outside himself and the concerns of Hashem rather than ask who is achieving. He asks what has been achieved in the broader concept. In the worlds come over ever closer to finding their ultimate purpose. From this perspective, this expanded outlook, a person's deeds are of momentous account because they literally affect reality, and that is deserving of joy. Okay, explain all that to me, please.
That was a lot. Okay, there's two major things, I think. One of them is there is sadness, and there's sadness and heart, and I forget what it's called in the Hebrew, so forgive me. But there's also like almost like a death of the heart, though, like completely you're not sad. If I remember correctly, the Alter Rebbe says it's actually good to be sad because that means you're halfway there. It means you actually can feel your sorrowness is actually stemming from the side of holiness, trying to get you to do teshuva and bring everything back to the side of holiness. And I think he says that it's the actual dead part of the heart that is really hard to overcome. I forget what he called it, but
Unfeeling heart at
yeah, the
times,
unfeeling heart, I think. Yes, thank you.
and the unthinking mind.
Right. And that's the real problem.
Okay.
And then I forget what my second thing. Oh no, I put them all together there. So I think that's what he's referring to. So don't be sad. I think this is kind of like where he was bringing it home. Whereas when one realizes, however, the Torah and the mitzvahs elevate the body and the animal soul as well, his joy will be untarnished.
Mm.
So
Okay.
don't, in other words, some people can get depressed or sad because they did something bad or whatever. I believe what the Alter Rebbe is saying, which was in chapters, I think he talked about it a bit through like 29 through 31 or so. He's like, it's part of the process. And I forget which verse he was using, but something to the effect of sadness has profit. Sadness, there's profit in sadness. What he meant, what in the Alter Rebbe goes on to say that what that is he's talking about sadness that leads to teshuva. It's if you have sadness, then that means you have the ability to correct. If you're not sad, if you're in a very lowly state, which is unfeeling and unthinking, then you're, and I forget what he said, how to correct that. I forget what it was. Because and you've either been there or you've known people they just don't care.
Mhm.
And how do you break that? Unfortunately, what I've seen is to get people to that state, they have to go through something traumatic in their life. Um, it's when things are all rosy and fuzzy that things are going well for people, that why would they need to look to Hashem? Why do they need God in their life type thing? Um, and what the Alter Rebbe said is that sadness, the breaking of the heart, is actually exactly what is needed in order to break the Sitra Achra, the Sitra Achra's hold on you, on your Nefesh Behemoth, and allows you to do what you're supposed to be doing. I'm paraphrasing in my own, but that's what I remember. So, in other words,
Thank
sadness, the breaking of your heart can get you to the next level.
you. Right. Right. Now that explains it better. Mhm. It says, like, and what you're saying, I think, the solution involves shifting one's awareness and way of thinking so that one's sense of self is no longer of prime importance, not only with regard to selfish motives, but even to supposedly holy intentions. The person moves from a world in which his sense of self and attainments are central to the objective world where the center is occupied by Hashem. Correct, James?
It breaks. Yes, your heart breaks in order for you not to focus on Hashem. You realize that there's nothing there. In other words, when your heart breaks, you realize that you're not dead. And you realize that that was not the sustenance of your life. And you can go on because there's something greater than what your heart was. So you
Because
can
you still have feeling. It shows that you still have feeling.
you still
that
have
you're
feeling,
not.
and though you still have sustenance, you still have life. So your sadness is not from is not the everything that you thought it was going to be. In other words, it was an illusion. It's like an illusion, and it helps you break into the domain, a new domain of the bigness, so to speak, of Hashem, or the encompassingness that he is encompassing more than just what you thought your securities were and your loves and joys, your pleasures, or whatever you had in life. It's beyond that. Like, for instance, like, let's say, heaven forbid, you have a dramatic fire, or I thought, we might have a tornado today. We had straight line winds. Like, things could happen in an instant. Like, what it went through my mind, like, oh, heaven forbid, our house gets hit. We would lose, physically everything, but would we still be, hopefully, God willing, you'd still be alive, right? But you'd have to start over. Does that mean, though, that my life is over? No,
Right.
it might even be a blessing. It's like, who
Right.
knows? You don't really, I don't know. I mean, you don't know. There's a joke about, like, when your computer crash. I got, like, all these tabs open, as I'm sure you guys can see, but I study something and I got all these tabs open, and it's like, your browser crashes or your computer crashes and you lose all your tabs, and it's like you have, like, this born again experience because all your tabs are gone, and you lost everything and you got to start again. But the thing is, maybe you needed it. But my point is, like, that's kind of what a broken heart can, the profit of a broken heart is the ability to start again. And not only that, but like you said, or maybe you were quoting Rabbi Steinschultz, but the ability to focus on Hashem, right? Where refocus, So
Yeah, that was Steinschel. Thank you for answering that, and sorry if I took up everybody's time on that, but I thought I needed an answer.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's an answer, but that's my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. So, alrighty, well, with that, I don't know. I think we need to call it a wrap for tonight. It's 10 o'clock basically, and we just finished chapter 31. We'll start chapter 32. That was excellent, though. And I started translating the skin, the skin of the serpent, from Sefer Hockey. I don't even know what it is in Hebrew. I don't know how to translate it, but the work by the Tzalmak Tzedek. So I don't know if I'll have that for you guys sometime or not, but it's currently on my drive. If anybody wants to share it, if anybody wants me to share it with them, shoot me a message. But other than that,
I
alrighty,
want
guys.
to share it.
Oh, good. Okay, I'll share it with you. So,
Okay. Thank
alrighty.
you.
Yep. Be well, everybody. Take care, and God
God
bless you. Shavua Tov. Yep,
Thank you,
Leila Tov.
James.
Yep,
Thank
thank
you,
you, Russell and
James.
Teresa. Yeah, thank you, Ernestine. Thank you,
You're
Dixie. Thank you,
welcome.
Mercy. And my wife, if she's still on here, I don't know. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hi.